Did you know that in the 1920s, one doctor compared women who really loved sex to vampires? In his 1922 book, Happiness and Marriage, Dr. William Josephus Robinson doled out all kinds of advice for how women could keep their husbands happy. Being quote-unquote frigid was a bad thing, obviously, but somewhat surprisingly, swinging too far in the opposite direction was much worse. In fact, that kind of wife was, in Robinson's words, a great danger to the health and even the very life of her husband. He goes on to say that this type of wife can literally be called a vampire. Yes, he uses the word literal, adding, just as the vampire sucks the blood of its victims in their sleep while they are alive, so does the woman vampire suck the life and exhaust the vitality of her male partner, or victim. And in some cases, he noted, women might actually pursue sexual vampirism on purpose. Take, for example, when a young woman marries an old man. She'll literally use sex to suck his life force dry so she can take all his money. And lest you think it's just young women who can be sexual vampires, think again. Robinson says that while women between 30 and 50 are particularly afflicted, no woman, no matter what her age, is immune. The TLDR advice here, ladies, is don't be a sexual vampire. It's just so unbecoming. Hi, I'm Erin McCarthy. Welcome to The List Show. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes dealing with your in-laws. And we're covering old-timey advice given for all of the above. Some of it is actually okay, but most of it, not so much. Let's get started. Let's put sexual vampires aside for a moment and talk about how relationships begin, with a date, or in the Regency era, which I will forevermore refer to as Bridgerton times, with courting. Back in the day, the person you married was pretty much the person you were stuck with, till death do you part. So Hester Chapone wasn't exaggerating when she said in 1773 that all your happiness in this world will probably depend on the companion you fix upon for life. So how best to go about finding that perfect match? According to The Polite Lady, or A Course of Female Education in a series of letters from a mother to her daughter, step one was not to dress like a tomboy in hopes that it would earn you the love and affection of a man. It wouldn't work. Clearly, this mom was unfamiliar with the cinematic oeuvre of one Amanda Bynes. Poet Thomas Gisborne didn't believe that opposites should attract. He advised that, when on a hunt for love, a lady should find a person who was like her, in everything from disposition to age to class status. 18th century Dear Abbeys also had ideas about who ladies should not pursue. Author Mary Wollstonecraft suggested that a woman should never make a match with a platonic friend and hope to be satisfied. Those relationships, she wrote, frequently end in sorrow, if not guilt. William Kenrick, author of The Whole Duty of Woman, warned against making a husband of a philosopher. Not only would he basically be inside his own head, thinking important thoughts all the time, but he would also hold the inferior to his profound wisdom and be wanting in the duties of his family. Similarly, women should beware of smooth talkers. As Wenton Wilkes warned in a letter of genteel and moral advice to a young lady, any man who flies into raptures, drops hyperbolic compliments, or makes dramatic vows involving his own death is, frankly, full of it. Wilkes wrote, "If you cannot help believing him, only recollect the old phrase, 'Violent things can never last.'" The goal of all this courtship is to fall in love, right? Well, not so fast. The 1793 book The Young Lady's Pocket Library, or Parental Monitor, recommended avoiding the L word entirely. In fact, according to the book, when a lady's heart has the misfortune to be attacked by love, it's time for her to tell herself that it would only harm her in the long run and get out of there before more damage is done. Sounds like the plot of every Katherine Heigl movie I watched in the early 2010s. Whether they were looking for a love match or just a dude they felt so-so about to call their husbands, all women had one item on the agenda after their wedding, and that was the wedding night. Back in the old days, many men assumed that so-called good women had no idea about what happened in the bedroom before they got married. Those doling out guidance in the 1920s advised that ladies be told something about sex, but not too much. For example, Maurice Bigelow, author of the 1916 book Sex Education, a series of lectures concerning knowledge of sex and its relation to human life, advised that an adolescent girl should be told the scientific names of her sexual organs, not because there are many vulgar names as in the case of boys, but because dignified names help attitude. But Bigelow cautioned against going into too much detail. That could, in his words, arouse curiosity that leads to exploration and irritation. It's probably not surprising that the vast majority of romantic advice is aimed at women, but books for men did exist. One of them was What a Young Husband Ought to Know by Sylvania Stahl, author of such previous hits as What a Young Boy Ought to Know and What a Young Man Ought to Know. in which, bonus tip, he advises that young men must keep themselves pure by avoiding things like novels because they pollute the mind. A person with a dirty mind isn't likely to be pure in body either. The main thing newly married men have to keep in mind, Stahl says, is that in women, there exists less sexual desire and satisfaction than in men. Some women get moderate pleasure in sex and few a lot, but most, he says, are largely devoid of sexual pleasure. There are a few reasons for this, according to Stahl. They might be ill, or perhaps they go to too many parties, eat indigestible food, or read too many novels. Or maybe it's the fact that their tightly laced corsets have displaced all their important sexual organs. Seriously, that's a Stahl suggestion. Or perhaps he speculated the woman is just indifferent to sex, which could be due to the fact that she and her husband are a poor match, or that she's chronically constipated. Hard to say. In What a Young Husband Ought to Know's sister publication, What a Young Wife Ought to Know, we do get some sound advice regarding the virtue of patience on the wedding night. As the book describes it, many otherwise kind men have become possessed with the thought that every right is theirs immediately. And in their inconsiderate, rapacious passion, in the speedy consummation of marriage, whatever cost of pain or wounded feeling on the part of her whom they have taken to love and honor, they well-nigh wreck the after-happiness of both in the first days of their united lives. She can never again feel the same respect and love for you that she could had you been more considerate of her feelings and desires. According to Bernard McFadden, author of the 1918 book Womanhood and Marriage, if your wife is just doing her duty during sex, that is a very bad thing. To get to why that is, we need to talk about semen. I wrote this script, so I only have myself to blame. McFadden wrote that semen doesn't just help create new life, but is also an important part of keeping a man's body strong. During sex, a man will, in McFadden's words, discharge this creative fluid. If the woman provides what he calls a full response, then there seems to be an exchange of magnetism or energy which makes up for the loss of the creative fluid. But if his wife is just doing what she thinks is her wifely duty, the husband will experience a loss of vitality. Keep this one-sided thing up long enough and a husband won't be able to go about his productive daily life. But that's not all. McFadden also says that even if a wife is into it, sex shouldn't be had too often because, again, it's going to drain brain energy, his words, and make a man less mentally capable and efficient. I feel like McFadden could have swapped bunk science notes with our sexual vampire hunter from earlier, William Josephus Robinson. As long as we're back on the subject of sexual vampires, let's drop another piece of advice from Dr. Robinson. This one from his 1917 book Woman, Her Sex and Love Life. This tip concerns underwear. As Robinson says, whether you are newly married or have been married for a quarter of a century, be sure that your underwear is the very best that your means will allow you, and that it is always sweet, fresh, and dainty. Motion to change every adjective from the end of that last sentence. Robinson also had opinions on women's underwear color, recommending delicate pink. I don't say this to belittle Dr. Robinson, who was actually quite progressive for his time in frankly discussing sexual matters, but given that he doubled down on the pink underwear recommendation 5 years later in Married Life and Happiness, I'm left with the sneaking suspicion that the average man who he says prefers pink underwear might have been William Josephus Robinson. Let's fast forward a bit to the 1940s and 50s. By that time, the world sure had changed, but advice given to women for a happy marriage had not advanced that much. First things first, ladies, don't complain about anything, because your husband, who's been working hard all day, does not want to hear it. Instead, as Edward Podolsky wrote in 1942's Sex Today and Wedded Life, your role is to 1. Listen, and 2. Build up his morale. If you have family issues you absolutely have to raise, for God's sake, do it after dinner. On the subject of food, in addition to being your husband's therapist and cheerleader, you would better be a good cook. As our friend Dr. Robinson notes in 1922's Married Life and Happiness, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, bad cooking leads to indigestion. Indigestion leads to crankiness. Crankiness leads to fighting. Feels a little bit like what Yoda was talking about in The Phantom Menace, if the Jedi Master had spent any time hanging out with Betty Draper. Anyway, Dr. Robinson says that bad cooking will drive a man to the saloon and other undesirable places, so when she does cook, she should cook and not be, as somebody said, a mere can opener. Obviously, no marriage is perfect, but according to our old-timey experts at least, if you follow all these tips, you should be in pretty good shape. But ladies, men are men, and they still might stray. And if it does happen occasionally, Dr. Robinson suggests that rather than going all Carrie Underwood on his car, you should instead forgive and forget. Just because he cheated on you doesn't mean he doesn't love you. And if you forgive him, he might love you even more. Let's wrap up with a few quick pieces of century-old advice for harmony with the in-laws. For men, that might involve getting to work well before the wedding day and buttering up their future mother-in-law. At least that's what New York Magistrate Olmsted recommended to one unhappy husband in 1899. I courted my mother-in-law, Olmsted said, and my home life is very, very happy. Whether or not a man decides to court his mother-in-law along with his wife, it's probably a bad idea for all of them to live under the same roof. As popular advice columnist Dorothy Dix wrote in 1919, any man who establishes the fatal triangle of self and wife and mother in his home and expects to find peace and happiness in it is a fit subject for an alienist, aka a psychiatrist. According to Dix, there was no greater danger to a happy home than a mother-in-law living in it. I'm sure all of her mother-in-law readers love that. To keep the peace with the in-laws, you have two options: smile and nod, or just keep your opinion to yourself. An 1859 issue of the American Freemason tutored women dealing with a mother-in-law to always listen patiently and be grateful and yielding to the utmost of her power. Meanwhile, an article that appeared in the Rural New Yorker aimed at father-in-laws noted that if dad had an issue with the way things were managed in the home of his son or daughter-in-law, it is far better to pass the matter over in silence than to comment upon the same and thereby engender bad feelings. Finally, according to Good Housekeeping, it's probably best for all in-laws to put themselves in each other's shoes. The magazine told husbands to remember that their mother-in-law is just as wonderful as their wife and mother, before really nailing their point by asking, "And who is your precious wife's mother-in-law?" Your beloved mom, that's who. Mothers-in-law, meanwhile, should keep in mind that the husband your daughter has chosen with your sanction is not a worse man naturally than your husband who used to dislike your mother as much as your daughter's husband dislikes you, or as much as you once disliked your husband's mother. Wise words. Thanks for watching Mental Floss video. We're dropping new videos every Wednesday, with some extras sprinkled in. Don't forget to hit the bell and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. We'll see you next time.